Good morning, students. Good morning to all. And yesterday we have studied about the economics of scale and the internal economics of scale and the external economics of scale. And you got the same concept as your study portions. So today also just we will remind the 5 minutes about the economics of scale and we will go to the next concept. The scale of production. The scale of production refers to the ratio of factor of productions. So in which ratio we have to assigning the factor of productions and in which level we can produce the commodities. This ratio can change because of availability of the factors. So the amount of or the scale of production will always be changed because of the availability of factors. If there is no more factor of production to produce any of the commodities, so the producers cannot be able to producing more commodities. So the scale of production is an important factor affecting the cost of productions. So always the producers want to produce all the commodities with a low cost of productions. But the low cost of production always depending upon the availability of factors of productions. If there is more factors of production is available, the cost of productions may be very low. If there is no availability of the factor of production, the cost of productions will be increased. So every producer wishes to reduce the cost of productions. Hence, he uses an advantages of economy scale. So whichever way the producers want to gathering the advantages of the economies from their productions unit, he will want to get. But here the two type of the economies will be getting in the production unit, the internal economies of scale and the external economies of scale. So first already we have studied the term internal economies of scale refers to the advantages enjoyed by the production unit, which causes the reduction in the cost of production of the commodity. When we are producing the commodities, so what are the ways are there to reducing the cost of productions, and because of that in however way we will get the advantages is called economies. So here the 5 type of the internal economies are there. So internal economies means so the types of advantages will earning from the premises of the production unit is called the internal economies of scale. The external economies of scale means so the advantages is earned by the outside of the premises of the production unit. So in these boundaries of the production unit, what are the internal economies of scales are there mean? First one is technical economies. So when the size of the firm is large, the large amount of capital can be used. So when we are producing any of the commodities, we must use the more capitals. And if the producer has the more capital, on the basis of the more capital, he can use some of the technical. So there is a possibility to introduce up-to-date technologies. This is improves the productivity of the firm. So by using the new arrival of the technical in this production unit, we can produce without taking more effort and any troubles. So by using the technical or any of the machineries, it will produce more commodities, so equal to the more labors. So by using the technical, so the producers will get the advantages. That is called technical economies. On the basis of using the technical, if you are getting the advantages, that is called technical economies. Next, financial economies. So the big firms can float shares in the market for capital expansions, while small firms cannot easily float the shares in the market. So as we have studied in the commerce, so more large-scale industries can able to produce the or use the shares. So when we are comparing to the small-scale business unit, the large-scale business unit only will have the power and able and rights to issuing their shares. So after constructing and continuing their business activities, if they are issuing the shares, so they can get more advantages. That is the more financial abilities or more income of finance. So that is called financial economies. Because of issuing the shares, so one of the business unit or one of the business organizations are earning the more finance. It is called the financial economies. Next, managerial economies. So large scale production facilitate the specialization and delegations. So in this large scale production unit only have more power and the chance to adapting the specialized skilled persons. So when any of the persons are doing like that, so on the basis of improved the managerial, so we will get some of the advantages. That is called the managerial economies. Next, labor economies. So the large scale production implies greater and minute division of labor. The division of labor means, so some of the particular task is going to assign to the particular peoples, those who has more knowledge and specialized skill in that particular line. So when we are adopting the division of labor, the productivity of every labor will be increased and the amount of productions also will be increased. So by using the labors and the division of labor, one of the production unit is getting more profit. That is called labor economies. Next, marketing economies. So in the context of large scale production, the producers can both buy raw materials in bulk at cheaper cost and they can take the produce to distant market. So normally by purchasing the raw material and the bulky from any of the wholesaler, he will get some of the benefit. So when they are purchasing the more raw materials in the very cheap labor, very cheap price, he can produce more commodities and because of that he can get more market facilities. So throughout the world or throughout the regional or throughout the state, so the one of the producers can able to get the new market and the existing market also will be extended. So they enjoy huge bargaining power. So because of the marketing power, if they are getting the advantages, that is called marketing economies. Next, economies of survival. So the product diversification is possible when there is large scale productions. So the large scale productions only as the product diversifications. So the product diversifications means, so when we are producing any of the commodities and it has reduced their demand, so the production unit can able to focus on the production of other commodities and on which product it has get the loss, that the same ratio of loss will be earned in the production of other commodity which has high demanded. So not only that, when they are doing like so only, it can able to survive in the business world. So when we are able to surviving in the business world by the possibilities of that product diversifications, they can get some of the advantages. So this is called economies of survival. By continuance of the survival of the business world, the large scale production unit will get the advantages. That is called economies of survival. Okay student, then next today we will study about some of the external economies of scale. So the external economies of scale refers to the changes in any factor outside the firm causing an improvement in the production process. When we are establishing any of the industries, the outsiders or some of the factors in outside will be improved because of these industries. That is called external economies of scale. So these are advantages enjoyed by all the firms in the industry due to the structural growth. So around the business organizations, so many of the structural will be changed depending upon the industries. So the industries also will be gathering some of the advantages. This is called the external economies of scale. Some of the important external economies of scale are mentioned here. First one is increased transport facilities. How the production unit will be increasing the transport facilities mean? For example, one of the nuclear power project was there in nearby the Karungal, right? So once upon a time there was no transport facilities, but after established the nuclear power project in Karungal, so the transport facilities was increased, and some of the government also will be and some of the advantages. And suppose if the products is the business organizations also can adapted or can provided the transport facilities for their labors and some of the members also. So on the reason of establishing and the industries only, if the transport facilities increased, that is also one of the advantages. Next, banking facilities. So when any of the large scale industries are establishing or existing in our regional, so one of the banking also has to establish on all the events undertaking on the large scale production unit. So and the large scale production also will be required in more capitals, and they have to deposit some of the amount of money in this bank. So the banking facilities and the employment opportunity in the banking sector also will be increased. Next, development of townships. If any of the large scale industries are located in any of the area, so around these industries, so many of the townships will be arranged. So the construction of townships also will be and some of the advantages. And because of that, the townships or because of the purpose of providing the day-to-day living style, many of the facilities will be created around the townships. Next, development of information and communications. Suppose if any of the large scale industries are there in any of the particular place, the information and communications also will be increased abundantly. So information and communications will be developed, and the research organizations also has been increased on the way of existing on the large scale industries. Next, diseconomies of scale. So the diseconomies of the scale are the disadvantages to a firm or an industry or an organization. This necessarily increases the cost of production of a commodity or service. So when we are getting the advantages by conducting or establishing the industries, it is called economies of scale. But in the same time, if you are getting some of the disadvantages by the way of establishing or continuing the business organization, it is called diseconomies of scales. Suppose when we are establishing any of the industries, in here the cost of production is increased by doing something, is called as diseconomies of scale. So further, it delays the speed of the supply of the product to the market. Suppose if the cost of production is increased, or some of the disadvantages only is arised within the premises of the business organizations, so the supply of the product will be less or reduced, or it will be affected. That is called diseconomies of scales. So here also we can classify it as two types. First one is the internal diseconomies of scales. If any of the problem or if any of the disadvantages are arised within the premises of the business organizations, it is called internal diseconomies of scale. Next, external diseconomies of scale means some of the unnecessary things are establishing around the business organization. Some of the disadvantages is arised. That is called external diseconomies of scale. So internal diseconomies of scale mean when the scale of production increases beyond optimum limit, its efficiency may come down. So by having the more economies of scale, if the producers are producing the commodities beyond the optimum level, So the productivity or the interest of the labor also will be reduced. And if the supply of the commodities also will be increased in the market. So on the basis of the law of supply, if the supply of market is increased, the price will be come down. So automatically the wage rate and the profit of the production unit, everything will be reduced. Next, external diseconomies of scale. The term external diseconomies of scale refers to the threat or disturbance to a firm or an industry from factor lying outside it. For example, a bus strike prevents the easy and correct entry of the workers into a firm. Similarly, the rent of a firm increases very much if new economic units are established in the locality. So already we have studied the increased transport facility is one of the economies of scales. But in the same time, if the bus strike is there, so that prevents the easy and correct entry of the workers into a firm will be arises. So the workers cannot able to come to the firm in the proper time. So the bus strike is arised on the basis of any other factors, but the firm will be affected. So some of the reasons will be affected the firm by arising any of the unnecessary things in outside of the firm is called diseconomies of scales. So like that, the rent of the firm increases. So because of that, more new economic units will be established. So like that, if any of the problems or occurs in outside, because of that, if the firms are getting any of the disadvantages, that is called the external diseconomies of scale. Okay students, next one of the concept, the law of supply. The law of supply. So we have studied already the law of demand. So like that, when the demand is increased, like that, the law of supply also will be refers to the direct relationship between the prices of good and the supply of the good. So the law of demand is refers to the prices of good and the demand of the goods. So in this law of demand, there was an inverse relationship among the price and the demanded commodities. But in the law of supply, there is direct relationship between the price and the commodity. So the law of supply is associated with the production analysis. It explains the positive relationship between the price of a commodity and the supply of that commodity. For example, if the price of commodity increase, the supply of the commodities also will be increased. Because so the law of supply always associated with the supply side or maybe the production side. So wherever the price of that commodity is increased, so the producers only have to take the effort to increasing the supply. But if you are increasing the supply, he will earning more profit. So whenever the price of the commodity is increased, so the producers will taking more effort and he will try to increasing the more supply. Okay. So there is the positive relationship between the supply of the commodity and the price of that commodity. So in this law of demand, we have studied if the price of that commodity is increased, the demand for that commodities will be reduced. But here, if the price of that commodity is increased, the supply of the commodity also will be increased. Same. So law of supply describes a direct relationship between the price of a good and the supply of that good. For example, if the price of the milk, if the price of that apple is increased, so the producers also want to cultivate more apples. So because of that, the supply also will be increased. So one of the definitions are there. So other things remaining the same, if the price of a commodity increases, its quantity supplied increases. And like that, if the price of a commodity decreases, quantity supplied also will be decreased. So other things remaining the same means some of the other factors are there to affecting the supply of commodities. Suppose if the income and the taste and preference are increasing, the supply of commodities will be increased. Otherwise, long term, short term scenario is there. So we will study about later. So in the short term and the long term also, the supply of commodities will be changed. So other things remaining the same. If the price of a commodity only increases, its quantity supplied increases. And like that, if the price of a commodity decreases, so the quantity supplied of commodity also will be decreases. So next we have to study the supply function. How the supply of commodity is going to functioning mean. Already we have studied the other things. So what are the other things mean? The supply of commodity depends on the factors such as price of a commodity. First one. Next, prices of a labor. Normally, if the prices of a labor is very low, the supply also will be increased. Next, price of capital is very low, the supply of commodity will be increased. The state of technology is increased, the supply also will be increased. The number of families increased in our nations, the supply also will be increased. So next, the prices of related goods will be decreased, the supply also will be increased. And the prediction of the future price, if the people predict in which the prices of one commodity is going to increase in futures, the supply of commodity will be increased in presence. If it is going like so we can draw the function of supply. We can draw the supply functions in mathematically. The quantity supply is equal to function of price of X goods and the price of related goods and the price of factor of production and the technology and the objectives of producers and the expected price of the consumers in futures. Okay, so these 6 factors also will be depending upon the supply functions. Next, assumptions. For explaining the law of supply, so we must accept or we must adapting some of the circumstances. So in the circumstances only we can explaining the law of supply. First, there is no change in the price of factor of productions. Okay, so before and after increasing the supply of commodities, there is no change in price of factor of production. And there is no change in price of capital goods. Capital goods means, for producing any of the commodities, we will use another one of the machineries. So that machinery is only considered as a capital goods. Okay, but there is no change in the price of capital goods also. Next, there is natural resources and their availability also remaining the same. Because on the basis of the availability of the resources, only the producers can increasing the supply of commodity. Okay, so the natural resources and their availabilities also has to be remain the same. There should not be any change. Next, there is the price of substitutes concept. The prices of substitutes also has to be constant, because already we have studied the substitute goods also will be depending or will be affecting the supply of commodity. So the prices of substitutes also has to be constant. Next, there is no change in technology. If the technology is increased or the new technology is arrival in this production, in our production the business world, so the supply of commodity will be increased. Next, the climate remain unchanged. So because we have studied on the basis of the demand, so on the basis of the climate changes also the demand will be increased. So on the basis of increasing the demand, the supply also will be increased. Okay, so there is no climate change. The climate always remain unchanged. Next, political situations remain unchanged. So on the basis of the political situations, also the supply of commodity will be increased. Sometime if any of the party maybe decrease the price of one commodities, but within the next 5 years some other party will come to the rule and they will increasing the price of that commodities. Okay, and they will imposing the low tax and high tax on any of the commodities. Okay, so there is no change in the political situations. Next, there is no change in tax policies. Okay, as I told already, so the tax policies also will be affecting the supply of the commodity. Okay, so these 8 assumptions must be taken to explaining the law of supply. So next, the supply schedule. See, the 5 combinations are there. So when the price is 1 rupee, the supply of commodity. So supply of commodity mean, so we can take as a apple. Okay, when the price of apple is 1 rupees, so the supply of apple will be increased the 20 unit. Suppose if the price is increased, so the producer of apple will be increased the supply of apples. So the supply also will be increased as 40. So like that, whenever the price of that apple is going to increase, on the basis of increasing the price of apple, so the supply of the apple also will be increased from 22, 40, 60, 80 and 100. Because the price is increased. Whenever the price of the commodity is increased, the supplier or the producers will earning more profit. So by using the more factor of productions, by using the more capital, he will be increasing the supply of commodities. Okay, so there is positive relationship. Whenever the price is increasing, so like that the supply of the commodities is also going to increase. Okay, so there is the positive relationship. So the prices also will be increased and the supply of the commodity also going to increase. Next, the supply curve. So we have studied in the law of demand. The law of demand, the demand curve will always sloping downward from left to right. From left to right only the demand curve will be there. But in this law of supply, the supply curve always will be moving upward from left to right. Because on the basis of demand, the demand always will be decreased. But here the supply always will be increased whenever the price is going to increase. Just to see here, when the price is 1 rupee, the commodity, the quality supply of commodity also will be as a 20. So whenever it will be increasing from 1 to 2, 3, 4 and 5 unit, price 5 unit rupees, the supply of commodity also will be increased from 20 to 40, 60, 80 and 100. So the supply curve also will be going upward or moving upwards from left to right. The quantum supplied of commodity X is represented, and the price of the commodity is represented on the y-axis. The points such as A, D, E, B, C on the supply curve SS represents various quantities at their different prices. So whenever the price is increased, the amount of the supply of commodities also will be increased. So there is the positive relationship between the prices and commodities there. Okay student, if you have any doubt, please ask me in the law of supply and the diseconomies of scale also. Thank you.